igniting community, a safe space to learn, share, and grow. Don't forget to like and subscribe below.
Hi ladies, I'm Doris Forster and I'm back with another gender talk. Today's talk is going to build upon previous talks on global fertility rates. And fertility is the number of babies a woman is expected to have in her lifetime. In the previous talks, we've seen a connection between fertility rates and gender equality. And what we tend to see is countries that are more economically developed have lower fertility and greater gender equality, and countries that are not as economically developed, we see higher fertility rates and lower gender equality. So we've looked at the relationship between fertility and infant mortality and fertility and maternal mortality, and today we're going to look at another indicator of fertility, and that would be women that have decided that they don't want as many children and what they can do about that. So that would be contraception. And so women now would have the decision in many countries, but not all, how many children they'll have, when they have those children, and when they have finished their families, what they can do to make a permanent change. So we're going to look at some data today from the United Nations. This is a report. I was surprised that they had a report. I've seen lots of data on contraception, but I haven't seen a report. So this is the Contraceptive Use by Method report for the United Nations in 2019. So the data is likely from 2018 and maybe a couple years before that. And the data is only good as the country that is collecting it and surrendering that data. And so we don't know how they're collecting the data, what indicators they're using for their data, and so we're just going to use this data just to give us a snapshot of women around the world and where women are having more access to different methods of contraception and where women do not, and how that relates to fertility, which then relates to gender equality. So in this report, there's just a couple of things I wanted to highlight, and this is part one of this topic. I'm going to do another one because this is, as I went through the data, I could see that there was a lot more involved here, so I'm going to separate that into two parts. So the first graph here, you'll see that we have 1.9 billion women of reproductive ages, and that is between the ages of 15 to 49. That's not to say that somebody younger than 15 cannot have a child, because we know that that has happened, or typically women do not have children after 49, but that is just in demography, that is sort of the cutoff point for reproductive ages. And so we have 1.9 women that are in that age group, and out of those 1.9 women, we have 1.1 billion that have a need for family planning. They've expressed that they would like to control their family size and have more choice. We do have, out of that 1.9 million, 790 million, or 42%, that have no need. So either they're too young, they're going to school, they're not married, they're not having sex, or for whatever other reason, they don't feel that they need any type of family planning. We have 44% of those women, of the 1.9 billion women, that their needs are being met by modern methods, and then we have 4% of those women, their needs are being met by traditional methods, and traditional methods are primarily withdrawal and rhythm, and the modern methods would be birth control pill, condom, IUD, injections, that sort of thing. But what I want to focus on is this 190 million, the 10% of the 1.9 billion, that their needs are not being met. An unmet need. So they either do not have access, or they don't have the education to know what forms are available to them or how to go about it. And so this is the area that we need to focus on in order to increase gender equality. And what you're going to notice, not necessarily in this talk, but in the next one, that there is a connection between this, where these 190 women live, gender equality, infant mortality, maternal mortality. Okay, and if we look at this graph, this divides methods of contraception by traditional methods. So we can see withdrawal and the rhythm. And then the other, I'm not sure what goes in there. And then we have the short acting. So this is people that want to prevent a pregnancy on the short term. And then, maybe in a month, a year or two, they might decide that they want to have a child. And then it's very, very easy to transition from using contraception to not. And then we have the more long term. So it's either permanent or ones that you would use for a longer period of time, like the IUD or the implant. What I want to focus on here is the sterilization, female versus male. Look at the difference. We have 24% of as a contraception method, of all women using contraception method, 24% of them are have gotten female sterilization, or they've been sterilized, versus the 2% of males that have. And so this is quite alarming, because it really shows that the onus is placed upon the woman to have the more invasive surgery than the male's procedure is, and that it puts the responsibility on the females over versus the males. Okay, so the main methods are male condom, 21%, pill, 16%. And these cost money. So in countries where they're making $2 a day or $1.60 a day, this becomes a difficult thing to get the money to buy these things. And then the other one would be the IUD, and then of course female sterilization. Now if we look at this graph, just put myself up here. This shows regionally the main methods of contraception. And you can see in Central and Southern Asia, female sterilization is by far the most common method. Latin America and Caribbean, it's kind of a mix between female sterilization and the pill. But again, the responsibility of contraception is placed solely on females. You can see male sterilization is a small component. The biggest one is in Oceania. Here, very small. You can't even see it there. A little bit Northern Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. This graph I felt really interesting, because it shows the difference between 1994 and 2019 for of women of reproductive ages using various methods of contraception. And again, for every single one except the rhythm method and male sterilization, we see an increase in all the use between 1994 and 2019. And male, look at the decrease in male sterilization, 43 million to 16 million. And then we've got a slight decrease in the rhythm method. Again, placing the onus on women to deal with female reproduction and family planning. And it should, instead of being something that, you know, a couple would decide together, this is something that the woman needs to take care of. And there's inequality there. Okay, this map is a little bit confusing, but basically the countries in the dark orange reflect that the majority of the population is using the most popular form of contraception, more than 50%. And then we have, so it just tells you that they likely do not have more than one or two types of contraception available to them. And so they're limited, and therefore they have to use the main, or the most, not the most popular, but the one that is used the most often. So countries that are in the light, less than 30, tells you that there's many forms of contraception that women can use. Okay, and I'm just going to scroll through these very quickly. This is all the different forms of contraception, and it just shows you what parts of the world are utilizing what forms. And so there's the female sterilization, injectable, the IUD, and the implant. And then we have male condom, the pill, the rhythm. The rhythm method is interesting, because countries that are 5 to 10% are using that method are the same countries that had higher gender inequality, higher infant mortality, higher maternal mortality, and higher fertility rates. And then we have withdrawal method, and that's in this part of the world, Eastern Europe and a bit of the Middle East. And that could be a cultural, religious thing as well. All right, and if we look here, it just goes through geographically the difference between traditional, short-acting, and permanent. And you can see each region, it's kind of, it goes by the country that has the greater percentage of permanent versus short-term and then traditional. And you can see as you go through that the poorer countries have more short-term or short acting, which then would relate to higher fertility, and they probably have a little bit more of the traditional, which would not as effective. You can see the same Eastern and Southeast Asia. We've got Korea and China at the top. Japan, I'm not sure why they're there, but you can see Myanmar, Cambodia, Malaysia have more of the short acting, and it could be that it's cheaper, it could be access to education, it could be access to a doctor. Okay, and then we look at Northern Africa and Western Asia. We have Egypt and Syria leading, and then Algeria and Sudan at the end, or having more, using more forms of short acting. And then we have Sub-Saharan Africa. And here you can notice right away that overwhelmingly it's almost the majority of it is the short acting and not the permanent long acting. But you can see the countries at the top of that, and its economic development. And then Europe and North America, and then finally Oceania. I found that interesting. And the last one I think this is the last one. It's comparison of the prevalence of female and male sterilization in countries where prevalence of sterilization is at least 10%. So at least 10% of couples, one partner is sterilized. And look, overwhelmingly you can see that it's females that are having the procedure done, even though it requires hospital stay, that surgery is longer, more invasive, that women are having to make that decision. And it almost removes the males from having a part to play in reproduction, family reproduction. Okay, sorry, I was videotaping at school, and we had like the end of the school day bell, so I've stopped the video. But anyway, that's it for part 1. I hope you come back for part 2, where we'll dig deeper and look at some countries that women are contraception needs are not being met, and how that can relate to lower gender equality. Until then, bye for now.